Welcome to the AI-Fi universe. If you want more stories like this, like the video and subscribe, you'll want to know what happens next. Abel had learned two things in 3 weeks of playing Dockhand on Orloff Station. The coffee would dissolve a bolt, and the rats carried knives. The rest was noise. He wore the name Harl in grease pencil on his chest and let everyone think he was another cheap body hired by the quarter hour. A grimy exojacket with one dead haptic sleeve, a worn cap pulled low. Hardly anyone looked twice at Dockhands, and that was the point. He stacked crates that hummed softly with cryopumps, checked mag clamps with a half-busted torque wrench, and cursed at loaders that thought about misbehaving. His real kit, slim quantum transponder beads, a polymesh camera the size of a thumbnail, two micro darts, lived in a hollow behind the console of Bay 46B, tucked where station maintenance had once removed a screw and never bothered to replace it. Orloff Station hung in the slow drift between inhabited routes, a donut of welded cylinders and pipe farms, half lit, half legal. Bulk freighters swung in to dump ore or haul fuel. Smugglers squeaked through gaps in customs with holds full of industrial solvents or agri-spores, and nobody asked questions because questions cost credits. Abel didn't ask questions either. He listened. He listened to the clack of cooling rails after a loadout, the hiss of bad seals, the mutter of captains threatening to write angry letters to no one. Above the noise, he listened to the crews, their gossip stitched with the flashy thread of rumor. One rumor kept returning like a song you couldn't kill. Precious artifacts, priceless, delicate, illegal to own, and even more illegal to move. From who? Depends on who was talking. The Viridians with their glass-thin memory spheres etched at the quantum level. The Frown, whose ceremonial sky bones were carved from fossilized lightning. The Trilaxians, whose woven coral reliquaries were living treaties you were meant to speak to, not store. Abel didn't need the provenance, he needed the proof. Proof tended to arrive in crates with the wrong labels. "Morning, Harl," chirped Sari from the far end of the bay. She balanced on the lip of a loader like a gymnast on a bar, tail flicking for balance. Sari was Zebian, meerkat quick, weasel clever, fur mottled like spilled ink. Her hands were always moving. When he'd first arrived, she tried to sell him a genuine admin override key, which was actually a cut-down spoon. He'd laughed and given her half his lunch anyway. That had been week 1. By week 2, she'd stopped trying to play him. By week 3, she split her coffee with him and taught him how to kick a reluctant pallet sled so it thought you loved it. "Morning," Abel grunted, playing the part. If he opened his mouth too much, he'd give himself away. He had clean vowels. Harl wouldn't. "You look worse than the recycler," she said, dropping lightly to the decking. "That means either you haven't slept or you tried the machine over in 47C. "Both," he said. "You're an animal." She handed him half a protein bar without looking at him. "New ship-in today. The Radiant Quail. Private registry, clean papers, dirty hull." "Dirty how?" "Like someone painted over a name last week and thought they were clever," Sari said, nose wrinkling. "Smells like money, smells like trouble." Abel felt the little elevator in his chest rise a floor. He kept his face bored. "We get to move it?" She shrugged. "Tessa's on rotation, but Tessa owes me for not telling Menlo about the thing with the forklift in his foot. We'll see." They did see. 2 hours later, a tug nudged a fat-bellied freighter into the berth. The name Radiant Quail glowed in cheap hollow across a scarred prow. Close up, Abel saw the ridges of old letters like ghosts beneath fresh paint. A name long and sharp, something with consonants that liked to cut. Deck boss Menlo came down himself, sour and sweating. "This one's quick," he said, reading from a slate like it owed him money. "Non-hazardous industrial ceramics. Dock, move, reload. Don't get clever with the scanners. Captain's got priority clearance," which was, of course, not a thing on a station like Orlov. Priority clearance was code for someone paid somebody to look away. Sari made a face at Abel behind Menlo's back. Abel hitched his exojacket tighter and nodded. The Quail cracked its belly open to the bay, and the first crate rolled out on auto tracks. Abel felt it in his boots, the faint, wrong humming you got from a soft field tuned to keep a particular resonant structure from shaking itself apart. It might have been a field built for delicate ceramics. It might also have been a field built for memory spheres that held a dead people's songs. The label said kiln elements. So did everything else that wanted to not exist. He and Sari took the lead sled. The crate on it was the right weight and the wrong temperature. He adjusted the sling and let the sled guide itself down the yellow line. Sari walked backward, watching his hands because that was her habit. Check the person, not the crate. She trusted crates more than people. It had probably saved her life more than once. He envied her that kind of experience and hoped she'd never need to use it again. "Hold!" Menlo barked, and the line stalled. A trio of hard-faced men with clean boots and matching jackets had walked in with a bored swagger. They wore the bland uniform of consultants, the kind that sometimes loaded crates and sometimes loaded bodies. Their eyes snagged briefly on Sari. She blinked and pretended not to notice. Abel didn't pretend anything. He stood like a dockhand, which meant he stood like furniture someone would have to pay to replace. One of the consultants made a joke about how expensive ceramics were getting. Another laughed too hard. The third ran a scanner wand along the crate's seam and smiled to himself like he'd won a bet. Abel adjusted his grip and waited for his moment. It always came. Moments were tectonic. They looked still until you felt them move. It came in the docking collar. A loader operator, Tessa, probably still hungover, bumped a stack which wobbled, which made Menlo swear, which made the consultants look away for half a heartbeat. In that heartbeat, Abel's left thumb blipped a patch under the crate's lip. It was an adhesive bead the size of a lentil and dumb until awoken. It kissed the crate and went to sleep again, pretending to be paint. The quantum tracker inside it would entangle on command with a seed in the hollow of Abel's jacket. It was expensive, illegal, and very hard to find even if you were looking for it. He slid the sled forward, breath steady. "Hey," Sari said, too bright, to the consultant with the scanner. "You want to see something cool?" She flicked her claws and palmed a coin so it danced in the air. Street magic, quick as joy. "Not now," said the consultant, but his eyes betrayed him. They tracked the coin's gleam. "Bet you can't do it," Sari said, grinning like a dare. Abel loved her a little for that, not in a way that would ruin his life, in a way that made it sting to imagine what would happen if the sting ever came. They moved the crates into a secondary bay the Quail's crew had rented for repacking. That was the tell. No one rented a repack bay unless they wanted to swap labels for other labels. Menlo didn't like it, but Menlo liked the idea of breathing more than he liked the idea of saying no to money. In the repack bay, Abel counted 12 crates. He put his hands on 9 of them. The consultants hovered, trying not to look like they were hovering. The scanner-happy one whistled tunelessly. Sari muttered at her sled like it owed her credits. On crate 7, Abel felt the humming go sweet, sweet like a glass note sung by a choir. The label on that one said, Replacement Bearings, Hydroponics Division. The capital P was a local misspelling. No one in hydroponics anywhere wrote ponics with a big P. Someone had rushed this. He got his second beat on the seam when the fight started. He hadn't planned the fight, but fights are democratic. Anyone can nominate one. A longshoreman from Bay 44E, a human named Jaro with too many muscles and not enough thoughts, tried to cut the queue at the recycler. He swung the stub of a torn conduit like a club. The recycler's overseer, a tall Trilaxian in a control suit with a face like carved stone, lifted a large palm in warning. Jaro laughed. He did not stop laughing when 3 Corvalin workers stepped in and pinned him like a bug on felt. The consultants flinched. Menlo groaned. The dock cameras pivoted to broadcast the stupidity. Sari, to her credit, didn't even glance. She knew a staged distraction when she saw one. It wasn't staged. That was the best part. The universe loved improv. In the noise, Abel caught Sari's eye, flicked a glance at the Quail's side hatch. She paled a fraction. "What are you doing?" she whispered, but she kept moving, stepping into the angle that blocked the consultant's view for 1 breath, 2, 3. Abel slid another bead into place. 12 crates, all but 3 tagged. Not bad for a morning that smelled like hot metal and worse coffee. He pulled the sled toward the inner gate, where customs scanners blinked, bored. The gate crew wore the gray of authority security. The kind of law that existed only to make the higher laws look good by comparison. He'd set this part up with an anonymous tip right after Sari mentioned it. The tip had said, falsified manifests, high-value contraband, radiant quail, Bay 46B, come heavy. They had come medium. He'd take it. Random inspection, the chief said, not bothering to fake random. Open them. Priority clearance, the quail's captain said. A woman with eyes like ground glass. Yeah, the chief said. Priority for me. Open them. Crates 4 and 8 opened first, and they were exactly what they claimed. Ceramic tiles, high grade, dull as rain. The captain smiled and said something about delays. The chief said something about procedure. Sari shifted on her feet. Abel adjusted his grip and let his heartbeat climb in precise steps. He kept his face blank. Then they opened crate 7. Light leaked out like a tone. The field around the contents sighed. Inside, nested in foam that didn't deserve them, lay 6 Viridian memory spheres, old as language and as rare as trust on Orlov Station. Their surfaces were transparent and not the way a thought is. You could see your reflection only if you forgot you had a face. Filaments wound through them like hair in water. No one spoke for a breath and a half. Then everyone spoke. Shut it, the captain barked, going pale. You're under arrest, the chief said, going pink. Sari's claws dug into the sled's handle. Those are, she started, then bit it back, because saying the name was like saying a god. It made things too real. The consultants reached for weapons they weren't supposed to have. Menlo reached for his hat and found it wasn't there. The Viridian spheres just lay there, singing an inaudible chorus to anyone who wanted to listen and didn't deserve to. The first shot was a mistake. The second was an answer. The third was religion. Chaos became the air. Abel moved through it the way a swimmer moves through current. He was fast, strong, and he was the one who had spent years learning how people become predictable under pressure. One consultant with the scanner would try to smash a sphere to ruin the charge. He drifted left. The captain would go for the emergency seal to lock the bay and purge the cams. He drifted right. The chief would put his body between the law and the thing that had to live. He stepped into the chief's wake. The consultant in the back, the one who never spoke, but seemed to watch everything. Abel knew he would bolt for it. He was the boss. He had skin in the game and wouldn't hesitate to protect it. Sari got knocked sideways by a panicked loader. She went down hard, breath knocked out, eyes open and unfocused. The loader, heavy and blind on inertia, kept coming. Abel slammed his shoulder into it and felt the sick, familiar joy of things hurting the way they should. He planted his boot and shoved the sled off its arc. It scraped the deck and screamed metal at everyone's teeth. He didn't care. It missed Sari by a hair and kissed a bulkhead instead with a sound like a gong. You're good, he told her, hauling her up by the harness. You're an idiot, she wheezed and grinned, because that's what you do when you almost die and then don't. Authority reinforcements poured in late enough to be typical and early enough to matter. Stunned pulses cracked like summer thunder. The captain was down and swearing in a language that didn't have vowels. 2 consultants were eating deck plate. The third consultant took a sphere and ran. As predicted, Abel saw him bolt for it. The sphere tucked wrong, too much pressure on the lattice, and flinched on instinct. He also saw the loader rocking with crate 7 and making for the same hatch the consultant had chosen. You never get all the birds, so you make sure the ones that do fly take seeds with them. Abel palmed the activator in his jacket. He raised one hand like he meant to surrender to someone in particular. He clicked the switch twice. The beads and seams on crate 7 woke up and entangled with the seed in his chest. The seeds sang back at a frequency only the beads could hear. Somewhere in Abel's head, the world became a map with a single, all-important point that would show up even if someone wrapped them in silence. It wasn't perfect, but on stations like Orlov, nothing ever was. The runner hit the hatch. The hatch hit him back. A stun charge slammed him into a curl on the deck. He dropped the sphere, which did not break, because civilizations that etch their souls into glass are not stupid about glass. An authority tech caught it like a baby and started crying without meaning to. Crate 7 slipped out, pushed by the 3 Zebian, who were either smart enough to panic or paid to. The bay door stuttered, tried to close, failed as a body wedged it, then shuddered open again. The loader slid through and into the maze of Orlov's mid-level corridors, where 1,000 moving parts could hide a planet. Abel let himself get knocked down by someone official, so he'd have a reason to be on the ground counting boots and blood. He put a hand on Sari's shoulder so she'd know he was still real. She squeezed it once, and then punched him lightly in the arm so he knew she was too. It was over like a door slamming. The chief stood with his hands on his hips, breathing like a man who'd swallowed too much adrenaline. The captain of the Quail lay cuffed, staring at the ceiling like it had betrayed her. Menlo was yelling at no one in particular. The memory spheres hummed on a table like a choir practicing. "Dockhands," the chief said, pointing at Abel without looking at him. "You and you," he pointed at Sari, "don't go anywhere." "We live here," Sari said. "Where am I going to go? The moon?" "Shut up," the chief said, and she smirked, which was how Zebian said, "You're welcome to authority." Abel nodded and kept his face the exact shape of a dockhand who had just had a day. He let a medtech look at a bruise he didn't have. He let the scanner wand pass over him. It found the tools he was supposed to have, and not the ones he wasn't. His jacket was very good at being a jacket. When the chief was done chewing Menlo into pulp and stitching him back together, he came to Abel. "You move those crates," he said. Not a question. "I move what's in front of me," Abel said. "See anything?" "Ceramics," Abel said, deadpan. He let the word sit like a stone and watched the chief's mouth twitch. "Right," the chief said. "If you remember anything useful, you'll remember where my office is." "I'll forget on purpose," Abel said. The chief snorted and walked away. Sari waited until the authority had hauled the worst of the mess away. Then she turned on Abel and poked him in the chest with a claw. "You pushed that sled like you knew where it was going to land," she said. "I like living," he said. "You don't sound like Harl when you say that," she said softly. He almost said something dumb like, "I don't know who Harl is." But he'd liked being Harl. Harl had been simple in a way Abel never was. Harl had dirty hands and a job you could finish by dinner. "Do I sound like a man who owes you a drink?" he said instead. "You sound like a man who thinks a drink will make me forget," she said, but her mouth tilted. "And it might." He took her to the least awful stand in the canteen and bought 2 cups of something that pretended to be tea. They sat on a plastic crate and watched a pair of Trilaxian's youngsters try and teach a human baby how to wiggle its ears as if could. "Those spheres," Sari said, staring at the rim of her cup. "You know what they were." "I know what they weren't," Abel said. "Kiln elements." She laughed, short and sharp. "Someone's going to come looking." "Probably," he said. He didn't say they already did. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked, surprising him. "Getting off this tin can, going somewhere with fewer knives?" "I go where the cargo goes," he said, and it was the truest thing he'd said all day. She bumped his shoulder. "That sounded poetic." "I'm going to assume you didn't mean it to." "I definitely didn't," he said, smiling despite himself. They finished their tea and walked back to Bay 46B like nothing had changed, because that was how you buried the parts that had. When Sari peeled off to fix a loaders with the persuasion of a wrench and a lullaby, Abel ducked into the hollow behind the console. He pulled a thin slab out of a thinner pocket and woke it. The screen came up cold and functional. All the beads pulsed silently and sat silently in the station's security center. The 7th pulse was moving through the station's bowels at a lazy, infuriating crawl. Whoever had gotten those loaders out had a plan, and the plan involved getting lost where maps went to die. He flicked to a secure line and called a number he knew by bone. It rang once and cut. A voice answered that sounded like violin tuned with gravel. "Report," Brock said. Abel responded simply. "We've got a choir and a trail," he said. "Words," Brock said. "Use more of them." "Radiant Quail docked under a fake name," Abel said. "Manifest says ceramics." We stirred the ant's nest. We found at least 3 verified crates with Viridian memory spheres. Station authority confiscated 11. I got a quantum tracker on the one in the wild. It's currently in the lower station sections but being moved slowly. Probably going to be shuffled into new packing. Consultants on site, armed. Captain detained. Dock boss complicity probable. I've got a local Zibian named Sari as my cicerone. A pause. Broke didn't do praise, not in words. Abel heard the pause and felt it land where it should. "Your cover?" "Intact," Abel said. "For now." The trail? Quantum beat on the runner, Abel said. I can follow it. I'll need a sweep team that doesn't spook easy. Authority? Cooperative while they think this looks good on a report, Abel said. They'll get bored in an hour. Then you have 59 minutes, Brock said. Your lead. Don't let anyone heroic die. If you can't keep yourself from doing something stupid, call me first and I'll do it for you. You're all heart, Abel said and caught himself smiling. One more thing, the Zebian. The friend, Brock said, as if the word had edges. She's quick, Abel said. She knows the station better than the map that thinks it owns it. If this goes sideways, she'll see it coming before I do. Bring her in? Not unless we have to, Abel said. But don't be surprised if she's already in and doesn't know it. Understood, Brock said. We'll watch the impound. You retag that crate. If you lose it in a way that teaches me something. The line went dark. Abel tucked the slab away and listened for a second to the station's heartbeat, the grind of fans, the complaint of pipes, the cheerful obscenity of a mechanic arguing with a pump. He stepped out into the bay. Sari looked up from the loader, grease blackening her fur in streaks. Well, she said, like they'd been having a conversation for years. Well, Abel said, I'm going to take a walk. You want to come see if Menlo's hidden stash of decent coffee is a myth? You know the right lies to tell, she said, hopping off the loader and falling into step beside him. They walked. He let the map in his head pull him down ramps and along corridors that smelled of rust and hot ozone. Sari talked about nothing in particular, as if nothing in particular were a song she'd promised to sing. Abel answered the appropriate amount. The bead pulsed at intervals that made him itch. At a junction where the lights had learned to blink in Morse, the dot took a sudden, decisive turn. Left, Abel said. Left gets you to the old ore processing drums, Sari said. No one uses those, not unless they're trying to disappear. Then left, Abel said. She glanced at him sidelong. You make disappearing sound like a hobby. I try not to, he said. They turned left. The corridor narrowed, then opened into a space that had once hummed with machinery and now hummed with the ghosts of machinery and desolate life. The drums were huge and hollow, mouths yawning. Someone had strung laundry lines between them. Someone else had scrawled poetry on the curved walls in a language that looked like math trying to be tender. The dot centered on the third drum. Abel slowed. He put his hands in the universal position for Dockhand who's lost, and let his eyes go a little stupid. Sari did the opposite. She got sharper. There, she breathed, pointing with a twitch of her chin. A patch on the drum's side looked like every other patch and wasn't. Fresh weld. Bad job. Abel felt the little elevator in his chest rise another floor. He kept his voice soft. You ever feel like your day's about to get educational? Only when I'm with you, Sari said and grinned, teeth bright in the dim light. He knocked twice on the patch. It knocked back. Inside the drum, something moved. The bead pulsed once, steady as a heartbeat. Abel smiled, then small, mean, and satisfied. Found you, he whispered, and set his hand to the seam. Inside the drum, the sound of shifting metal stopped. Then a voice, sharp, nasal, Zebian, said, Who's there? Abel stopped in the doorway just long enough to sell fear, then let out a nervous laugh. Easy, Dockhand from 46B. Got turned around chasing a shipment tag. You lot look like you're moving some delicate stuff. A second voice, older, rougher. We don't need help. Back out before we make you part of the cargo. Abel raised his hands, palms open, the universal gesture for I'm stupid, not dangerous. The faint blue glow from the memory spheres cast trembling light across 3 Zebians, hunched around a half-open crate. The orbs pulsed with inner light, each one nested in improvised foam. The Zebians had the look of dock rats gone entrepreneurial. Quick eyes, scarred hands, clothes patched one time too many. Relax, Abel said, stepping carefully closer. I'm not here to stop you. Just figured if you're smart enough to move those artifacts off this rust bucket, you're smart enough to cut in a fourth, but not smart enough to pack those spheres without authority sensors picking them up. The smallest Zebian, all jitter and tail flick, hissed. You think we split 4 ways? I think you need someone who can help you get those crates past authority without getting your tails shaved off. Abel said smoothly. You keep your cut. I just want 10% on the back end. No fuss, no reports, and no one has to know you're here. The three exchanged quick glances, a silent argument made of blinks and tail flicks. The oldest finally said, 10%? You must be dumb or desperate. Why not both? Abel grinned, leaning against the hatch rim like a man settling in for a long con. I move cargo every shift. You get these off station, you're rich. You get caught, you're fertilizer. Let me help you not be fertilizer. They didn't trust him. He saw it in the way their ears angled, the way their claws never left their belts. But greed is a better ally than trust. All right, Dockhand, the leader said at last. Okay, you show us how we load these spheres to full sensors. When the buyer pays, we send you your 10%. After we're long gone. Abel smiled like he'd just been given his first break in months. Fair enough. He climbed inside, crouched beside them, and began helping repack and reseal the crate. His fingers worked quickly, pretending to adjust shock foam while slipping tiny quantum beads between the layers of foam. They vanished within the sheets of padding like seeds under soil. When the Zebians weren't looking, he keyed the activator in his sleeve. Each tracker paired with its twin, whispering its location to a quiet node, half a system away. Done, he said, sealing the last latch. The Zebians nodded, satisfied. One tossed him a thin metal chit. Doc payment. Your 10% will come later if the stars smile. Stars always smile, Abel said, dusting his hands. It's people you have to watch out for. They snorted at that, thinking he was just another fool who'd never see them again once their ship cleared port. That was fine by him. He smiled all the way out of the drum. By the time they reached the main corridor, Sari's ears were flat. You're smiling, she said. That means either you got shot and don't know it yet, or you did something that's going to get you shot later. Neither, Abel said. Maybe both. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. They walked in silence for a while, the hum of Orlov's station swallowing their footsteps. The air smelled of ozone and stale coffee, the perfume of the forgotten. Abel's mind replayed every tracker ping, every pulse. Each one was a breadcrumb leading straight to whoever was buying relics that shouldn't even exist outside Viridian shrines. When they reached the access ramp to Bay 46B, Sari stopped. She didn't look at him right away. Instead, she stared at the scuffed deck plating like it might spell something important. You're really not Harl, are you? She said finally. Abel let out a slow breath. No, and you're going to be gone by morning. He looked at her then, and for a rare second the mask slipped. The smile that came wasn't a Dockhand smirk. It was tired, a little sad, and honest enough to hurt. Yeah. Sari's tail flicked once. Then she sighed. Well, come on, Mr. Not Harl. Let's at least get one more drink in before you vanish. He almost said no. Almost. But he followed her back toward the canteen, letting the neon lights wash over them like fake daylight. Somewhere deep in Orlov's underbelly, a stolen crate crept toward its uncertain fate. In Abel's jacket, 3 quantum signals pulsed like steady heartbeats. He smiled into the noise. Yeah, he said softly. One more drink.